Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Alexa Allen and each week I talk about a new true crime, conspiracy, or mystery. Last week we talked about a very important case, which was the case of Julius Jones. If you haven't got a chance to check that out, as always, I will link it right up here. I also linked his petition down in the description box of that video, so make sure to check that out after you watch the video. So this week we're going to be talking about something that has creeped me out since I was a kid and first heard about it, and that's the Mothman. The Mothman is categorized by some as a cryptid, and that's an animal that is said to exist, but its existence has never actually been proven. But some people think the Mothman is more of a paranormal being, a supernatural creature that harbingers death and disaster. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about why some people think that. The legend of the Mothman gained fame in the 1960s. But stories of humanoid flying figures were around long before then. They're referred to in cultures around the world, like Native American cultures and even in ancient Babylonia. In 1880 on Coney Island, a group of people saw a flying man-like figure. They said he had bat wings and frog legs and a cruel and determined expression. In 1953, there was a flying creature spotted in Houston, Texas, and he was dubbed the Houston Batman. A young woman, Hilda Walker, was on her front porch with her neighbors just hanging out in the evening, and they spotted what seemed to be a man with wings about 6.5 feet tall with a yellow glow surrounding him. The first sighting of the Mothman was on November 12, 1966 in Clendenin, West Virginia. A group of grave diggers, 5 of them, were digging graves late at night, and they saw a humanoid figure with wings. They said he was a brown figure flying in the trees, and it was definitely not a bird. So a few days later, on November 15th, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which was about 80 miles away, a group of 2 couples were driving along in a car late at night. They were just, going for a joyride. The couples were Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. So they're going for this joyride in Roger's 57 Bel Air, and Linda sees something and she screams. She said she sees this pair of glowing red eyes. So Roger stops the car right there in the middle of the road so they can all check it out. And they're all staring at this thing, like trying to figure out what could that be. They said it was 7 feet tall with wings folded on its back, and it was just in the road staring at them. They just sat there in amazement and then looked at each other, and Roger was like, "I'm getting out of here," and he sped away. And as Roger's racing down the highway, this thing starts following them. It's flying alongside them, and Roger said he gets up to 100 miles an hour, and the thing is keeping up. So it follows them all the way to about the outskirts of town, and they think they lost him. So Roger stops the car, they pull over, and they kind of regroup. They try to figure out, what did we just see? What the hell was that thing? They're discussing it, trying to rationalize the situation, and they come to the conclusion that it had to have been a weird freak-like bird or something. They tell themselves it was just a bird, and they go do what they're originally planning to do and go for their ride. They turn back around towards the direction that they were headed in the first place. But as they get further down the highway, they see it again. It's standing on the side of the road as if it's waiting for them. They now realize without a doubt this thing is definitely not a bird. They don't know what the hell it is, but it's definitely not a bird. So Roger turns the wheel. He turns the car to point at the creature directly on the side of the road so the headlights are shining on him. But as soon as the lights hit him, he jets off, they say, at tremendous speed, and it goes above the tree lines, and he's out of sight. So they go straight back to town. They head to the sheriff's office and they tell him what happened, and the sheriff goes out to investigate, but he finds nothing. Later that night, when Linda got home, she was so distraught about what she saw, she had a complete anxiety attack and had to be brought to the hospital. Roger said about the encounter, quote, "I'm a hard guy to scare, but last night, I was getting out of there." He said if he were alone that night and saw the thing, he would have never told anyone about it because that's how unbelievable the thing was. So the following day, the police hold a press conference in town about this thing, which seems, straight out of like an old black and white horror movie. The police hold a press conference about this creature that was spotted. Like, that would never happen today. The press jumped on the story, of course, and they dubbed the creature the Mothman. So that night, on November 16th, Marcella Marcella Bennett and her brother and her little girl were going to visit relatives on the outskirts of town, around the same area that this thing was spotted the night before. They get to the relative's house, and Marcella's brother spots these weird lights in the sky, and he's like, "Marcella, come check this out." And she's annoyed, she's kind of tired, she's carrying her daughter, and she's like, "Let's get inside." And he's really interested in these lights, and he's trying to show her, but then Marcella sees something. She sees what she describes as a 7-foot-tall bird man, and she stops right in her tracks, and she said she's in a complete state of shock and can't move. She wants to run, but she physically cannot. Marcella then just collapses on the ground, and she said she was holding her daughter, so she collapsed on top of her daughter, and inside she's panicking and telling herself she needs to get off her daughter, but she can't move, and this thing is standing over her. She said she finally got the courage to stand up when she heard the creature's wings flying off. And this all happened really quick, so they all rush in the house after this happened, and they get inside and they're like freaking out, but then they see this thing come back, and he lands on the porch and he's looking in the windows at them. So they call the police come out, but by the time they get there, the thing is gone. Marcella said she was so disturbed at what happened, she still has nightmares and anxiety to this day. So like I said, these stories started to get published in local newspapers, and this one journalist from out of state named John Keel got wind of the story, and he decided to take a trip down to Point Pleasant and investigate what was going on. He thought this could be a really interesting story. John said when he got there, it seemed like a very normal small town. Everyone was very friendly and welcoming. It didn't seem like a bunch of crazy people trying to put on a story or anything. But as John is asking around about this creature, he soon discovers that there are a lot more encounters with this creature than had initially been reported. A lot of people said they were embarrassed to report what happened. They thought maybe it was a dream or some weird hallucination they'd had. And these encounters continued throughout the winter. They kept going on. More and more people were spotting this thing. Some even were left with physical afflictions after encountering the Mothman. They would have burns or rashes on them. One girl, Connie Carpenter, who was 17 at the time, was driving home one night when she kind of saw something out of the corner of her eye that made her stop. And she kind of slowed down the car and looked at it, and it was this pair of bright red glowing eyes. Now, Connie went straight home, she went to bed, and she was beside herself. She was in shock and crying, and her boyfriend came over and he asked her, what happened? What did you see? And all she kept saying was, those eyes, those eyes. And to this day, she won't speak about what she saw in full detail. One woman, Doris DeWeese, said during this time she spotted unidentified flying objects around her house. They were bright lights, they were circular, flying around, and they were multicolored. Another woman, Dottie Campbell, said she saw a flying object that was cigar-shaped with lights on it that was flying around her house, but it made no sound. There was no engine to hear. John Keel, that investigative reporter, he even saw the lights himself. He said they were unexplainable, and if you took a flashlight and shined your light on them, they would flash back at you. Enough people reported seeing these flying objects that, again, the press got wind of it and started publishing it in the papers, and the National Guard even came to check out what these lights could be. This is going on for months, and this local news columnist, Mary Heyer, was helping out John Keel with this investigation. She was publishing it in the local paper and kind of sharing information with John. Now, Mary says she was visited by these men on multiple occasions telling her to stop reporting this story. Now, we're gonna get into another kind of conspiracy here just for a quick sec, and I'll probably do a video on these guys at some point. They're called the Men in Black. Yes, just like Will Smith. That movie's actually based on real stories, a real conspiracy theory. So this conspiracy is that there are men that go around trying to silence people that have had close encounters with UFOs or aliens, and they tell them to stop talking about it. And I've read some of these stories about the Men in Black, and they're deeply disturbing. I'm definitely have to do a video on it at some point. So Mary describes these men as kind of robotic-like and having olive skin, and she noticed one strange thing about them: they never blinked. She said they told her to stop talking about the UFOs and the Mothman, and she said she really felt threatened by them and she was kind of scared for her life. They also approached Connie Carpenter, that young girl who had the encounter with the Mothman as she was driving home. One day when she was walking, they tried to grab her and pull her into their car. Not long after that, she received a note on her doorstep that said, "Careful girl, I can get you." Connie was terrified for months and didn't want to go anywhere or even leave her house. Doris DeWeese was also approached by the Men in Black and told not to talk about her sightings of these UFOs. Another encounter with the Mothman comes from 5 pilots, one of them being a local man named Everett Wedge, who was a very prominent figure in his community and trusted. They said it was a large bird-like creature that was so big it could have easily carried them away. On November 25th, 1966, a local man named Tom Urey was driving early in the morning around 7 o'clock, and he spotted something out of the corner of his eye. And when he stopped to look at it, he said at first he thought it was a helicopter, and then he realized it was this humanoid flying thing with wings. He said the thing was huge and it had a 12 to 15 foot wingspan. A few months later, a Red Cross bloodmobile was chased by the Mothman. They said it had its claws drawn at them. And around this time, there were also mutilated cows and dogs showing up around the area. By December of the following year, there were over 100 encounters reported. Mary Heyer, the local news columnist, said that she would have dreams about it and she would dream about packages floating in the water. She said she had this strong feeling that something terrible was going to happen. John Keel, the reporter, said he would get these strange, ominous phone calls warning him not to go back to Point Pleasant. And he never figured out where those calls came from. At 5:05 p.m. on December 16, 1967, the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio, was full of rush hour traffic, most of them coming back from Christmas shopping, when the bridge began to collapse. It happened very quickly and the entire bridge went into the river. 46 people were killed and 9 were injured, making this the worst bridge accident in American history at the time. After an investigation, it was found that the bridge collapsed because it was not properly maintained and it was not built to hold the weight that it was holding day after day. They said they were shocked that it even held up that long. So people started talking about how there could possibly be a connection between these weird sightings of this Mothman and the UFOs and this huge accident happening. It was almost 13 months to the day from the first sighting of the Mothman to the day that the bridge collapsed. Some people reported seeing the Mothman under the bridge the week before, and some people reported seeing those UFOs flying off in the distance as the bridge was collapsing. After the tragic collapse of the Silver Bridge, there were no more Mothman sightings and no more sightings of the UFOs. Since the sightings in Point Pleasant, there have been reported Mothman sightings around the world, always before a huge disaster. In Chernobyl 1986, locals would describe frightening encounters with a bird-like man the few months leading up to the nuclear disaster. In Freiburg, Germany, there was a moth-like creature that scared some miners out of a mine shortly before it collapsed. There are even some reports of people seeing him the morning of 9/11. Every year since 2002, the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia has this huge Mothman festival. They even have this big statue of him downtown. There's a Mothman museum, themed restaurants. It's really become a huge part of the town and their tourism business. John Keel went on to write a book, The Mothman Prophecies, which was later turned into a movie starring Richard Gere, which was terrifying in my opinion. Not a lot of things scared me, but that really freaked me out, maybe because I knew it was a true story. Just the idea of this creature that knows things and shows up around these disasters, it's like, is he good? Is he evil? Is he causing these events to happen? Is he a time traveler trying to help people? Is he like from the future and that's what humans look like in the future? And the glowing red eyes, ugh. I definitely think there's something there. There's something going on. But I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. I always love your opinions, so let me know down in the comments below if you guys think this is a hoax, or if it's a harbinger of death, some creature from outer space, whatever. Just let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.